From the former convent of the Good Shepherd overlooking Inwood Hill Park in New York City, welcome to Inwood Artworks On Air. It's where we meet the musicians, filmmakers, writers, theater makers, and artists of all stripes that make their home what we affectionately call Upstate Manhattan. I'm your host, Aaron Sims, and today we welcome theater maker and filmmaker Josh Liveright. Josh is a writer, director, and producer. In 1991, he co-founded Zena Group, a non-for-profit theater and film collective based in New York City. As Zena Group's artistic director, Josh produced New York premieres of plays by Mark O'Donnell, Jose Rivera, Stephen Dietz, and many others. As a filmmaker, Josh has produced several short films, including Let Go, American Falls, Matt Higgins, The Improvisor, and the What If shorts. In addition to his own work, he curates the performing arts space here at Buunni Coffee in Inwood. We're going to talk to him about a bunch of his work, but first, let me welcome you, Josh, to Inwood Artworks On Air. It's good to see you, man.
Great to see you, always.
Really appreciate making the time.
Thank you.
I was thinking about this interview, and I was like, well, we've known each other for a while, but the first time we collaborated was on Kirby Fields' K. Kama Joseph play, I believe, just next door in the auditorium.
I know. Remember that moment where we were like, how are we going to do this?
Yeah.
I think I sat on the stage for a little bit. I was like, I think everybody had this notion we were going to do a proscenium play.
Right.
And I was like, nah, I don't think so. We're going to play wing to wing.
Yeah, we closed the curtain and going, it is a proscenium play, but we're doing the entire play inside the proscenium.
That's right.
And put the audience on stage, too. Very effective, I thought. And I thought it was a great show.
Oh, thank you. Unfortunately, I think it coincided with Hurricane Sandy.
It did.
We had some audience, people, getting out to see it issues.
Yeah, we sure did. We sure did. But Grace Sink designed by John McDermott.
Oh my God!
And many other people involved in the show. Hard to believe it was 10 years ago.
Great cast.
Yeah, of course. A lot of repeat offenders.
That's right.
So how's your decade been since that 10 years?
Was that 10 years ago?
I think so. I think it was at least 10, if not 11. Yeah,
that's fun.
It's been a while.
So a lot of water under the bridge, right?
Totally.
A lot of changes in the whole cultural landscape as well.
Absolutely. Changes for better and worse as it goes. And you have the rezoning, you have the effects of pandemic, you have rent increases, gentrification, current high-rise in crime, I guess you could say, but it ebbs and flows with New York. For one thing that hasn't changed is the lack of venues for local artists to showcase their work.
Well, I tried to do something about that.
How about that for a segue, right? Not my first rodeo. So in 2019, you started a Kickstarter fundraiser through the Zena Group to address this issue. In your own way, and then you partnered with Buunni Coffee here in Inwood, their location they took over the
and bread and yoga too,
and bread and yoga was part of the collaboration to present a flexible art space. So how did this all come about?
Well, I think exactly what you said. This need for space, and I moved up here. When was it? Probably 2003. And I've always seen a general need for, community space. My wife, Marcella, beat me to it with bread and yoga. She created quite an institution here for many, many years back in starting in 2009. And there were certain arts programming involved with that, especially like for kids and families and whatnot. But I think, in fact, even like the Up Theater collective was, started out through bread and yoga because I think they did their first benefit at the corner of 207th and Broadway, place that burned down
before it burned down
in 2012.
For those of you who don't remember that big gray brick building where TD Bank wasn't there before. Well, it was a different building.
It was a different building, and that's where bread and yoga, where we built bread and yoga. Second floor, and so there's a lot of stuff that was happening there. It wasn't, it was a yoga studio. It wasn't a theater space. So I think that this idea just came out of the same vein that, what you've been developing here is like, let's do something for the community, and I wanted to give back to the community. This has been a purely volunteer effort on my part.
He's not a mogul, anybody. Just in case you're wondering, he's not a mogul. So yeah.
And fortunately, I had this nonprofit in my back pocket that had been around since 1991. That I started with a couple of really movers and shakers. My good friend Joanna Felser, who's the artistic director at Berkeley Rep now, used to run New York Stage and Film for a while, and my friend Jeremy Gold, who's the head of Blumhouse Television now. And then there's me. But anyway,
all success stories.
but anyway, so yeah, I was able to use that nonprofit 501c3 in order to come up with this idea of raising money from the community. So the community, because that's the mission. That was always been the mission of Zena Group anyway. Bringing art to the community.
Yeah.
And you kind of had to create languaging around that, when you're starting a nonprofit for the first time, that you have to have something community
We need a mission
oriented.
statement. It's got to affect the greater good.
Right. And so it fit in nicely with that. And, I talked to the Buunni folks, and they were really down for it. And Marcella and Bread and Yoga, being part of it, like brought that whole that following to the game as well. And so we just got out there and started raising money through Kickstarter, which I had done before for various film projects anyway. And it was highly successful. We reached our goal, and I worked with a local sound guy named Mark Dittmar, who runs Firehouse Productions, which is a huge, like one of the biggest sound rental houses and design houses in the country, actually. And in his spare time, he we looked at the space, and we put up the speakers and the cabling and made it sound really, really sweet. He did such a wonderful job. And then I work in the film business, film television business, so I had a couple of my good friends from the grip department, the Patsos brothers, George and Billy. They came and hung everything for me,
Called the favors in, really.
And another friend came and built the stage, but it was all. And another friend of mine, who's a great lighting designer, Lucrezia Briseno, she designed the lighting grid. So
a lot of good people working on
It's a professional.
something.
It's a small professional space that works really well for these type of events that we've been doing.
Yeah.
And so we started doing stuff in, I think, late October of 2019. And it was really like moving, It was like we had, even Steve Martin came to one of the shows. I don't know if you were there for that.
I was not there, but I think you remember seeing something about that. Yeah.
We had Joyce Carol Oates come. We had, we had some dignitaries show up and play music and read their literary work. Serena, who is one of the owners at Buunni, she started a writing group that would come and do stuff on a recurring basis. We did community open mic, and some concerts with some really like Biadan Kuti, who's Fela Kuti's cousin, came and played guitar with his band. So there's a lot of good stuff happening, and then I started booking a lot of other stuff, and then boom. Yeah. You know what happened next.
Yeah, I know. The pandemic put a hiatus on programming there, like programming everywhere.
Yeah.
And but now things are moving forward for the performance space. With that pause, as a producer, I'm going to ask you, is there anything you've learned from that before times and then the pause that has benefited you now moving forward as you start to bring things back now?
I think it's an appreciation of the gathering space, appreciation of community, of face-to-face, being together, and the value of live performance. It did put a button on that for me. I was like, this is what we need, because there was so much isolation during that period. But, it was a time of reflection too, as you're saying. And, I ended up doing a lot of writing.
Which we may see at Perform, and perhaps we'll see.
Well, I even did a Zoom play, during that time. I think Matt Higgins, who I collaborate with a lot, he's a local performer, improviser, actor, comedian. who was the star of K, Joseph, and yeah, he and I have sort of come up with some ideas together, and we did during we had to keep busy, so we did True West on Zoom during the pandemic.
Don't tell dramatists, playwrights, publishers.
No,
I
we
guess.
didn't.
Exactly.
And then we did a play that I wrote too about the pandemic stuff. Just a couple of friends kind of meeting on Zoom, and which was highly lauded by my old friend, the late William Hurt.
Oh.
He was one of about the 40 people who saw that play.
Well, that's some good feedback, though. If William Hurt likes it, yeah, God bless his soul there. So how has the relaunch gone so far with this space? Because you're starting to promote now. There's more things, and is there any differences in how it's operating than you operate before?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it feels really collaborative. I think that Serena and Elias and I have sort of worked out the kinks of what the relationship is like, and there, and like what my part is, and it feels really, it has a nice flow to it right now, and natural, and basically we're keeping things. We're not, like, I was super involved with booking stuff, or like before the pandemic, so there was a lot happening there. Now we're kind of like chilling out a little bit and doing like more, like we're easing into it. Mm-hmm. We're doing like one major thing a month, and then a lot of community programming, which I would call more of the lighter production type of stuff. But so far, we started in January, and we had Annette Aguilera and come with as a trio, and that was super. That was a super concert. She's, if you don't know who she is, she's a drummer.
She's been on the podcast.
Yeah. Oh, well, there you go. Anyway, she's wonderful. And then we had Yasser Tejada, who had played Buunni before, but he came with a drummer and did a set that I was pretty blown away by, actually. He has a nice following, and he was he reminds me so much of, like, in the style of like a Caetano Veloso, Brazilian artist, and just that kind of like smooth, silky singing, and folky, and that was really wonderful, and people were up and dancing, and we had a comedy show that Matt and I conceived of, and Matt brought in some really cool friends of him, from the circuit. The guy who plays Obama on the Tonight Show, and his name's Dion, and then he had another guy who was like the warm-up guy on Jimmy Fallon or something like that. And so these guys were
heavy hitters.
Yeah, and also a couple other people, a musician friend, and another local stand up. And so it was just a great event, and it was like a nice mix of people.
Very
so
cool.
Then we had Reverend Billy come back, and the Stop Shopping Choir. He loves playing there. And then we had we do such different kinds of things. Like, we did a talk with a couple of authors, Stephen Jenkinson and Kimberly Ann Johnson, who had written a book called Reckoning, which was based on a podcast that they did, where they had kind of, I think they may have met in person for the first time, but then a book came out of it. And it was about, she's a birth doula, he's a death doula. So there was it was a pretty heavy night. I will say.
Yin and yang there.
But that was a sold out situation as well. So we're still, we're building on all this. And coming up, I conceived of just, to get some theater into the mix.
Yeah.
We're going to do a night of short plays that are site specific to cafes, which would make, production values low.
And believable.
And so we're going to be doing that in May, and I've written the piece, and Matt's written the piece, and then a couple other, we have a couple of Latin Latinx people doing their thing too. And
Very cool. I was going to ask you, it's like, how is because I know the Zena Group is kind of like the shelter to kind of like present the work, but do you have any work from Zena being produced, like you said, your work?
Yeah, this will be a Zena Group.
Cool.
Zena Group production.
Excellent.
Yeah, Florencia Lozano, who's a wonderful actress, is contributing in a play, and a guy who's affiliated with Reza. Do you know Reza?
Possibly.
He's doing a play.
Fair enough.
He's Reza.
Well, he's not like Madonna yet, so or she is not like Madonna yet, so I don't know them as yet.
Yeah.
But well, looking forward, but I'll have a chance to see their work.
I know my memory sucks. Sorry, Reza.
Well, that's okay. We'll figure it out.
Yeah.
They know who they are, so it must be. Not to go into the weeds of the whole economics thing of it all, but for people who are looking for like a space to do like a coffee house culture kind of space that can support their work, can you speak to like the general economics of what artists can expect to use as space? Because I constantly hear about, hey man, I need space to do my thing, and they're always looking to fit in their budget. So that's too much, man, or that's much. So like, just can you give like just a general like, what is it? You know, do they rent it? Do you guys share the door, or like what kind of models? Without going into the weeds about it all.
Sure. So, for instance, you know, generally we'll do a box office split with performers heavily in their favor. And what we expect is for the artist to bring in their following, bring in their people, because it will behoove them. You know,
everybody wins.
And for the Buunni side, like, you know, they want to be able to provide the food and drinks and sell the food and drinks.
Yep.
You know, there's no like minimum or anything like that,
which is important.
And but there's great food and drink available for these shows.
And they do have a liquor license. I just want to plug Buunni for a second. They do have a liquor license to have beer or wine.
Beer and wine, yeah. So it's a nice night out, and like for Yasser Tahada's show, there's people ordering bottles of wine, and it was really festive. But yeah, so people can contact me or contact me through the Buunni website. There's an events page there.
Gotcha. What's the email address?
My email address.
Just to contact you, or the Buunni website address, which is the.
I think go through the Buunni website and contact through there, because that would be. There's an events email on there, so it's it's buunnicoffee.com, I believe, and it's the events page on there. It has all the info, and you know they'll rent it out, you know, for events as well. I'm not involved with that, but I'm more involved with the programming.
What I'm saying, the performing arts side, not like I want to cater my sister's, you know, quinceanera party there.
Right, but I mean, there might be some people that want to do a concert or something like that, or a benefit or whatever it is.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, they rent the space outside of the Zena Group. They rent the space out.
That's right.
Yes.
Yeah.
So not to confuse folk, just it is an active space, but we're talking about the curation and the programming of arts and culture here.
Yeah.
For our intents and purposes.
Thank you.
There you go.
Yes.
There you go.
So yeah, like healthy box office split, and I'll listen to the music, or I'll consider any ideas that people have.
And are you booking now? Like, what are you looking to fill towards what time windows and things?
I think we're looking for stuff for late spring. So
very
and
cool.
Then into the summer.
This podcast will hit in the spring here, so people should take note.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to entertain any ideas. You know,
very good.
I mean, I think, unfortunately, I can't say yes to everything.
No,
right?
Never can.
And that's I think tough on some people in the community, but where I have said no in certain ways. But
I know the feeling. It happens. You just don't have enough space and time for everything, or funds either, which is problem. But hopefully, like I have said numerous podcasts, and I'll say it again, it's like, you know, high tide raises all boats, and I think it's great that you have put so much effort, and you should be applauded for that, in all your energy and towards this, and that, you know, Buunni collaborates and you have it all figured out, and then it's emerging once again as a place for arts and culture in the neighborhood, because everyone art has its own specific needs, and so it's great to have yet another option in the neighborhood, and an artistic desert, I say, with an embarrassment of artists that we have here. It's great to have another home for that. So kudos to you, man.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I mean, I think that the idea behind this short play thing is that we'll keep doing it, right? And so we'll invite the writers that are in the neighborhood, the playwrights, to submit stuff at some point. We'll be more vocal about that. See how this first.
See how
one
it happens
goes.
first. I know Up did an evening of short one acts at one point, and I've produced one acts downtown numerous times with playwrights, and it's like, it's important to have that system in place once you kind of figure it out. And so, this would be great if you can kind of create like a little template for that and have like a quarterly or annual showcase of new short plays, whatever. Would be great.
And on some level, I have been doing that for a long, long time. I started down in Tribeca doing something called Tim's Loft, which was like a late night variety show type of thing. And then that became the Homegrown variety show here. First at Bread and Yoga, and then we did it at Darling Coffee, and now we were doing it. We did it a couple times at Buunni as well, and that's a successful sort of, I would say, algorithm of putting together a late night. Because it's like it's not even late night anymore, but it's like the short pieces, as long as they keep the evening moving. I think that's good for entertainment value right there.
I totally agree.
Because if it sucks, you move on to the next one.
You don't like it? Wait 5 minutes and a palate cleanser comes in, right?
That's right.
Well, Josh, thank you again. It's been a pleasure speaking for you and hearing more about what's going on, the reemergence of the space, and all the great work you've done in the neighborhood. And we'll put the description of the Buunni website in this episode so people can,
that'd be great.
People can find it and contact you, and we can see more of the great work of the people of Inwood and Washington Heights there.
Oh yeah, there's so much talent here. It's amazing to me. And what's really important to me too is, we hear about this a lot, is to bridge the gap between east and west of Broadway. And like that's majorly our mission statement here. Like we want to have a diverse following, and we want to include everybody.
Because art is for everybody.
That's right.
Absolutely. So, well, I think you're on your way to achieving that.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Well, once again, thanks to Josh Liveright for joining me on this Artist Spotlight episode of Inwood Artworks On Air. It's where you meet the musicians, filmmakers, writers, theater makers, and artists of all stripes that make their home here in Upper Manhattan. If you have a moment, please show some love right now by rating and reviewing this podcast on Apple Podcasts. It really does help. Many thanks to the Church of Good Shepherd here at Inwood, New York City for hosting us, and to HideSites.com for uptown promotional support. You can support On Air and all of our programming by making a tax-free donation at inwoodartworks.nyc/donate or via Venmo. You can support and follow us on social media as well by hanging out at Inwood Artworks to keep all that we do, including the Inwood Film Festival, Filmworks Al Fresco, live performances, and so much more. Inwood Artworks On Air is proud to be supported in part by public funds from the New York City Department of Cultural Affairs in partnership with City Council, and our programming is made possible by the State Council on the Arts with support of the Office of Governor and New York State Legislature. From the top of Manhattan and the bottom of our hearts, thank you so much for tuning in. This is Aaron Sims for Inwood Artworks On Air.